Hey everybody, so we are going to use the knowledge you just learned about primary and secondary colors to create our own color wheel. And what you're going to need is a piece of foil, or a Ziploc bag would work, or even like if you have a takeout box that's styrofoam, that would work too. You're going to need the primary colors in washable markers, okay? So I don't have red because my daughter's favorite color is red and she's used all of our red markers. So I just have pink. Pink works just the same as red in this activity. And I have a light blue. I recommend if you have a light blue washable marker that you use the light blue instead of the dark blue, because the normal blue is really dark. And sometimes when we're mixing colors, it's a little bit hard to mix with a dark color like that normal blue you would have in your box. So you're going to get these 3 colors, a piece of foil or a Ziploc or a piece of styrofoam, and then you're also going to need just some blank white paper. It can be any size really. And then a wet rag. I just have a little bowl of water with one of my cleaning rags in it. And you can use this, or a spray bottle with water in it will work fine too. So now what we're gonna do is we are going to start with our color wheel. And I'm actually going to ask you to grab your yellow marker first. And the first place that we're gonna color, we're gonna kind of make a circle out of these colors. And the top part of our circle is going to be yellow. So you can just kind of color a curved line yellow, kind of like this. Okay. So go ahead and pause the video if you want to pause and then make yours and come back. That's fine. You can do that a couple times throughout this video. The next color that I'm going to ask you to use is your red or your pink, whichever one you have or prefer. And now we're going to color pink or red from where the yellow almost ends. We're going to color a little bit on top of our yellow, and it's going to go down, our pink or red, it's going to go all the way down to the bottom, okay? So I'm going to start inside of my yellow spot here. Then I'm going to color to that mark we made at the bottom of our circle, okay? So you might be able to see some colors mixing in there already. Now the last color we're going to do is blue. And we're going to do the same thing in the yellow. We're going to color in a little bit in the yellow. So we're overlapping those colors. And then we're going to color down. And we're going to overlap or color into a little bit of our pink too. Now, the next thing that you're going to do is get a piece of paper. Here we go. And you want to make sure that your paper is big enough to like cover up your whole foil drawing, because what we're going to do is we're going to print this onto this white piece of paper. So I'm going to lay my paper here, and I'm going to take my cloth here. This is super duper wet because it's been sitting in the water, so I need to wring it out. I want to squeeze out as much water as I can. Obviously it's not going to be dry, there's still going to be water in there. That's good enough. And then I'm going to use my rag, or you can use a sponge, or if you have a spray bottle, you can just spray your paper. And I'm going to put some water on the surface of my paper here. And this is the first one that you do is truly a test. If the first print that you make doesn't work, then what probably has happened is you didn't add enough water, or you added too much water. So let's do Mrs. Avery's first test here. So I'm going to take the wet side of my paper, I'm going to lay it on top of my marker, and then I'm going to really gently kind of massage the back of my paper. I am pushing and adding some pressure, and you'll start to see some of that color coming through. And another thing that you could try, this is a really fun short project, so this is really fun to experiment with, and at the end of the video I'll show you some other options that you can kind of play with. I think I'm gonna pat the back of my paper with some water. because look at how much darker that is. It really pulls that ink up onto my paper. So if you want to go ahead and try to pull your first print, doing this process, you can pause the video and do that. Now let's see what Mrs. Savory's color wheel looks like. Ta-da! Isn't that magical? So there's really no ink left over here. And if you look where my yellow and my pink overlapped, there's orange. It's not perfect, but I definitely see some orange in there. And then where my blue and my yellow overlap, we've made green. And where pink and blue overlap, we've made purple. Now, let me tell you something about purple. When you're mixing colors to make purple, it never turns out perfectly. So this purple might not look like a purple colored marker, but this is a pretty awesome purple if you ask me. Now, for the extra fun parts, this is all that I'm going to have you turn into me. If you want to send me your extra experiments, you can too. So let me show you some ideas for your extra experiments. After each time you do this, you're going to want to wipe any leftover marker off, and I'm just going to use my wet rag to do that because there's really not that much ink left. So I'm just going to wipe it off. You might want to get a paper towel to dry it off, but mine doesn't look too wet, so I think it's okay. So the next thing, the extra activity I wanted to show you is if you get a crayon. So here's my crayon. A really fun thing that I love to do with this project is I like to draw any old thing. I think I'm gonna draw a jack-o'-lantern because it's that time of year, right? Can't forget his little stem. And maybe I'll even do his little vine too. Okay, so I've got my jack-o'-lantern here, and what color should I make this jack-o'-lantern? You could make it any color you wanted, but I do want to finish coloring in his eyes because I think it'll look really cool. Okay, so I have drawn my little jack-o'-lantern. I even gave him some curved lines for his like creases that you see in pumpkins. I added some texture, like bumps to his stem, and I colored in the face. So now to create, I want to make my pumpkin orange. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to color with my red or pink, whichever one you have. And then I'm going to put some yellow. And if when you do this, you're like, wait, isn't the pink gonna get on the yellow? Yes, it is. But let me tell you something cool. If you just take another piece of paper and just kind of draw on it a couple times, that red is gonna go right off of it. So it might mix up a little bit, but not too much. You can always get it off by rubbing on another piece of paper. And then I think I want the outside to be blue. Outside of my pumpkin to be blue. So you could do this with any drawing, like any picture you want. You just have to draw it with a crayon. Don't draw it with a marker, because then when you get it wet, this would come off if it was with marker. Crayon stays there if it's wet. So now I'm gonna go ahead and get my paper wet. I think I'm gonna try to get it a little bit more wet than I did the last time. I wanna make sure I'm wetting the whole thing. Now, I'm gonna flip this over, lay it down, smooth it out, iron it out. And I think I'm gonna get my wet rag again. And since your paper gets wet when you're doing this, just be careful when you go to pick it up, because we all know what happens when paper gets wet. It rips really easy, right? Or you get a hole in it. You don't want that to happen. All right, so let's see what it looks like. Ooh, that looks pretty cool. It's not perfect, but it's definitely fun. So there are tons of other things that you can do with this. I can't wait to see what you guys make.